Hello, and welcome to On the Level, the new Masonic chat show for the Lewis Masonic YouTube channel. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by lecturer and best-selling author Dr. David Harrison. In your book, The Genesis of Freemasonry, you put forward that speculative Freemasonry emerged from the stonemasons' guilds. How and when did that happen?
Around about the 17th century, really. There seems to be a transitional period that was developing. And by the time we get to the Civil War in the 1640s, there's hard evidence to suggest that there were speculative Freemasons coming into these operative lodges, and it seemed to have developed from there, really.
Where did the symbolism come from?
Well, the symbolism as we see in Freemasonry today is quite varied, but it dates back quite a way. There's numerous symbols from Masons' marks that you can still see around medieval churches and medieval cathedrals. It's very similar to the symbolism that's used in Masonry today. There's the popular image of the compass and the set square, and there's many variations of that symbol on various different cathedrals and churches throughout the UK, really. Other symbols as well, the more magical symbols like the sun and the moon and things like that, which, timeless symbols, really. John Dee, for example, in the Tudor period, he was certainly using the pentagram during his magical jaunts. We go into the Civil War period again. We've got Sir Robert Murray, Scottish Freemason, who was active during the Civil War, fighting for the Royalists. He used the pentagram as a symbol of friendship as well. So there's all kinds of different things going on that are filtering into Freemasonry, the symbolism, the beliefs, the ethos. It's a fascinating period where Freemasonry just seems to soak up different belief systems and different ideas during that period. It's a really good period for the development of Freemasonry.
What was the importance of Elias Ashmole as a Freemason?
Well, Elias Ashmole was a fascinating historical figure. Apart from being a Freemason, he's more famous for the Ashmolean Museum. He was a large collector, many different artefacts. He was very much into his mathematics and astrology, and he liked alchemy. He was more or less apprenticed to an alchemist, really, and an adopted son to this guy called Backhouse. Was always searching for lost knowledge and all different kind of weird and wonderful things, and which was quite fashionable in the 1600s. Ashmole was also a royalist. After the first stage of the Civil War in 1646, Ashmole found himself in Warrington, which is where I'm from, and that's one reason why I got so interested in this, really. And he entered into a lodge in Warrington, and he is the first recorded Englishman to enter into a lodge as a speculative Freemason. Wrote this in his diary, October 1646, and so he's been the subject, really, of many Masonic historians over the past few hundred years.
What were the esoteric influences?
Well, again, we go back to the Civil War period with Elias Ashmole and Sir Robert Murray, very much into their alchemy. And alchemy is considered, back then certainly, to have been something that was very real. They were searching for the philosopher's stone, and it's also akin to early science as well. Now we think of alchemy as something like Harry Potter and philosopher's stone and that kind of thing. But back then it was a very real gentleman's research, really. It was a gentleman's pursuit. They were very much into finding out about how to live forever, and again it was a search for lost knowledge, hidden knowledge, and this is something that resounds in Freemasonry today throughout the ritual. It's something that's very real at that period. It was soaking up a lot of different cultures. You've got the Rosicrucians, of course, and their legends. You've got the metaphysical poets, all that kind of wonderful poetry about searching for the soul, searching to be reborn. Something that's vitally important to Freemasonry is Solomon's Temple, and this is something that really captures the imagination of alchemists and early scientists, and early natural philosophers, and someone like Isaac Newton, who wasn't a Freemason, but he certainly influenced Freemasons, and he was passionately searching for the true dimensions of Solomon's Temple, apart from being an alchemist himself. So there's a number of esoteric influences that cross over and blend and merge, and it's a fascinating period. And this is the period that Freemasonry, as we know it today, speculative Freemasonry, was born from.
Who was behind the emergence of the 3-degree ritual?
Well, in my first book, The Genesis of Freemasonry, I put forward that Dr Jean Theophilus Desaguliers, he was a very influential Freemason in the early 18th century. He was a French Huguenot. I believe he came to England hidden in a linen basket. He was a guy that was into many things. He was a minister. He was a natural philosopher, an inventor, very, very forward-thinking. He was very much into early science of the period, and he was a disciple of Sir Isaac Newton. So there's a link from the old alchemy and that desire to find hidden knowledge through finding the divine measurement of Solomon's Temple, which was thought to reveal so many things. It would unlock the secrets of the universe, the first house of God, basically. The dimensions were given by God himself. The desire to find these dimensions would unlock all these secrets. Dr. Jean Theophilus Desaguliers, he became involved in one of the London lodges. He effectively created the 3-degree rituals of Freemasonry. Before 1730, at least, there was 2 known degree rituals. And what Desaguliers seems to have done was constructed out of those this 3-degree system. There's plenty of evidence for this, really. He was a poet. You can look at the ritual and there are poetical elements to it, as incidents of alliteration, rhyming scheme. In certain places there's a rhythm to it, and this all helps the Freemason to remember his chosen part. The ritual definitely developed around that time. We know this because there was an expose around about 1730. In 1738, there's a regulation change as well that indicates that there's now a 3rd degree, and there's a name to this 3rd degree, Master Mason. Before it was apprentice and fellowcraft. Desaguliers was more or less in control of everything at this point. He was an avid Freemason. He was a member of Grand Lodge. Remember, the premier Grand Lodge was founded in 1717. There was another guy as well, James Anderson. And Anderson, of course, he published the first constitutions. There's a lot of movers and shakers in Freemasonry at that time. It really seems to take off in the 18th century and really starts to adopt a new outlook, really, and brings all the other lodges under line as well throughout England. It's got a big shake-up in its administration, but there was also early rebellions as well. York appears to have gone on its own and claimed itself under a Grand Lodge, its own Grand Lodge. There were certain people, of course, that disagreed with this modernisation, and this is what led to the rebellions in the mid-18th century.
What led to the split and the formation of the ancient and the moderns?
Well, the ancients broke away from the Premier Grand Lodge in 1751, and they were obviously discontented, really, with what was going on. These changes, the modernisation of Freemasonry, changes, really, that Desaguliers brought into play. Saying that, though, the ancients and the moderns, as the Premier Grand Lodge became known as, there wasn't that much difference between the two, and they could kind of visit each other's lodges. You know, there's evidence where an ancient Freemason would nip down to a modern lodge and vice versa, you know. But there were disagreements at higher level. The Royal Arch was the major disagreement, really, because the ancients saw the Royal Arch as a 4th degree, where the moderns saw it as a bit of an add-on to the 3rd degree, a completion of the 3rd degree. So this was a major part, really, and that lasted till 1813. Quite a long fallout. People think of Freemasonry as being all harmony and brotherhood and nicey. There's a long record of Freemasons falling out, in a big way, really.
Why did Freemasonry attract so many members to the Royal Society?
Well, the Royal Society, of course, was founded around about 1660. This attracted some of the leading natural philosophers of the day. Christopher Wren, who was a Freemason, Isaac Newton with the alchemy, Elias Ashmole, Sir Robert Murray, again, Freemason, Dr Jean Theophilus Desaguliers. The Duke of Sussex was also a fellow of the Royal Society, and he, of course, became the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge in 1813. There's always been a lot of fellows of the Royal Society, and this could be because the networking, the forward thinkers that were involved in the Royal Society, they obviously saw something in Freemasonry that resounded this theme of the search for lost knowledge, ethos as well that developed in Freemasonry. There was a lot of lodges that gave lectures as well in the 18th century and the early 19th century. There's evidence that certain scientific lectures were given. In a Warrington Lodge in the early 19th century, there was lectures on astronomy and things like this. So the lodge room was about education as well. There's this ethos of education that runs right through Freemasonry.
Tell me about your new book, The Transformation of Freemasonry.
This new book really follows on from the first book, The Genesis of Freemasonry, the reaction to the Unlawful Societies Act in 1799, and how Freemasonry had to adapt because of that. It talks about how the United Grand Lodge came together and discusses about the Royal Arch, how that was a problem. And then I look at other rebellions that happened in the 19th century. The Liverpool Masonic Rebellion, which is something that happened in 1823, when again a number of lodges were just disillusioned at the way things were going, and they wanted to go on their own. So they created their own Grand Lodge again. They tried to resurrect the ancients again. And this eventually moved to Wigan and became the Grand Lodge at Wigan, another town near where I live. So that was close to my heart as well. And it allowed me to look at other things as well, other aspects of Freemasonry during the 19th century, things like how certain Freemasons were involved in the slave trade in Liverpool. In the early 19th century, in a lot of industrial areas, you get a lot of lodges that were filled with working men. And that kind of blows the myth away that Freemasonry has always been the preserve of the rich and the gentlemen. But again, it transformed itself, it adapted, and in the latter half of the 19th century, the lodges do seem to get a lot of middle-class, up-and-coming gentlemen that use it for networking, and it becomes the society that it is today.
Now, I'm interested in Esoteric Freemasonry. Could you tell me a little bit about the occultists that joined in the Victorian era?
That was a fascinating period for Freemasonry. I mean, the word occult obviously sends a few shivers down people's spines there. It's linked to devil worship. But if you look at the occult in, the Oxford Dictionary, it's basically just means research into the supernatural. And there was a lot of Freemasons doing that. Arthur Edward Waite, for example, he wrote a lot of material on Freemasonry, but he was also experimenting as well with other esoteric things, tarot cards, and he co-designed the Rider-Waite deck, which is still popular today. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was another one. He was very much into spiritualism. He obviously more famous for his writing Sherlock Holmes, but there was another side to Conan Doyle, and he was fascinated by the supernatural, always researching spiritualists and trying to find the answers. Again, it's just another way of looking for hidden knowledge. Frederick Bligh Bond, the early 20th century, he was excavating Glastonbury Abbey. He was doing this for the Church of England, and but what the Church of England didn't realise that he was using mediums to try and find out the location of various bits of the abbey, and he was apparently in contact with a few. I think it was a 12th century monk or something like that was guiding him around the abbey, and so he was putting the dig wherever he was told. And once the Church of England found this out, he was sacked. So a fascinating character. And then, of course, we've got Aleister Crowley, joined Freemasonry in a lodge in Paris, and went on to other things, dabbled in various different occult orders. But of course, we've got the Golden Dawn as well, which came about in the later 19th century. And again, that was founded by a number of Freemasons. And the Golden Dawn is a much more magical order. Hints of Freemasonry in there, hints of the symbolism and the ritual. So it was a really important time. I think there was a lot of Masonic interest in this. It was just researching for hidden knowledge again. And these people were trying the best to find the answers. And they were going into Freemasonry, and that was influencing them, to look at other things. They were going into different side orders as well. So it's just a fascinating time, I think.
David, it's been fascinating having you here on the Level. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thanks for the invite, Andrew. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.